Welcome! I'm Giulia and today's class is really interesting. Are you ready to start? Let's go! So, today I'm going to walk you through this Lightroom editing session. This is our practice session, so I'm going to take some information for granted. So make sure you go and check out all our editing classes to go in depth into every topic that we're going to talk about during this practice session. So the image that we're going to edit is this one. This is the before, and you can find the raw file of this image in your course material. So download it and import it into Lightroom, and then tag along this editing session. So follow me step by step as we get from this image on the right, on the left, to this image on the right. As you can see, the editing is subtle, but it's a lot more moody, and the colors and the subject really pop, and we emphasized the beautiful textures in this rustic image. So ready? Let's go. So we're into Lightroom now. And because this is an editing walkthrough practice session, I'm not going to go into too much detail about each of the topics that I'm going to cover. But don't panic, we have video classes, in-depth video classes about each of the topics that I'm going to cover. So if you want to learn more, go check those out before you actually put all those concepts into practice. To start our session, our editing session, we need to first import our raw file into Lightroom. And once we've done that and it's in Lightroom, then we head over to our develop module so that we can start our editing. Super! Now, before we start playing around with all the lovely sliders and have fun with it, we actually want to take a second to analyze the image and to visualize and think about how we want our final image to look like after we've done the editing. Now, often when you shoot your own images, obviously you know what the light condition is, you know the camera settings that you used, and you already might have an idea of how you want to develop and edit your image to convey the final mood and feel that you envisioned. Because obviously you haven't shot this image, I'm going to give you a little bit of context on lighting, camera settings, and how we shot this and what our idea was, so that the editing I'm going to do on it is going to make a lot more sense to you. We shot this in Laura's studio, and she did an amazing job at styling this beautiful salad with colorful tomatoes and pops of green and feta crumbs. So the styling is amazing. We shot this with flash, specifically with a flash gun, with a softbox as a modifier. And the softbox was roughly coming, the light was coming from this direction, so from like 1 o'clock. And down below here at 6 o'clock, we put a black flag because our idea for this image was to get a rustic and moody look. That's why we use the black flag to make our shadows darker so that we can achieve the moody vibe that we were going for. Our camera settings for this picture were ISO 100, so there's virtually no noise in this picture. We shot this on a full frame camera with a 50mm lens. Our aperture was 6.3 because our subject is not very deep and we wanted everything to be in focus, from the basil leaves to the beautiful texture in our background. And we shot it at a shutter speed of 1/200 of a second because we were shooting with flash, so we had plenty of light. Now, the way we want to edit this, because we're going for the rustic and moody vibe, the way I'm envisioning this final image is I want to emphasize the textures and colors on my subject, and as well as the texture in my background. I want my subjects to really pop, and I want to increase the moodiness of this image as well. So that's what I am going to achieve with my editing. And now that you have all of this information, we can start tweaking and playing around with our settings. The way I edit, I know some colleagues do it in a different way, but the way I edit, I basically start from the top and I move down, the way that Lightroom intended, basically. And then if I need to, I will go back and fine-tune it once I get to the bottom of my settings. So I generally start from the top, and I start by looking at my histogram. So as you can see over here, the histogram tends towards the right-hand side, which means this image is slightly overexposed. Not much, but a little bit over to the bright side. So I first want to check my highlight and shadow clipping. So I'm gonna press J on my keyboard or use these little arrows on top here to highlight the areas that are burned. And this is like, this image is a little bit overexposed, but not too much. As you can see, we still have all the details in our subject. Obviously, the only things that are a little bit burned are the reflective surfaces, which is absolutely fine. There's no problem there. And oh, look, a little hair here. So we're gonna have to work on that as well. So I start by taking a look at the whole picture, and then we can start. So since this image is slightly overexposed, the first thing I'm gonna do is adjust my exposure a little bit. So I'm gonna click on exposure and turn that slider down a little bit. That should do it. As you noticed, I haven't touched the white balance because firstly, I'm pretty happy with how the colors are here. Also, when you shoot with flash, your white balance is often and generally pretty accurate. So I could just click on the flash preset, which wouldn't change, really wouldn't change much in terms of my white balance. So I'm pretty happy with that for the moment. So I'm not gonna touch it just yet. Going back to the exposure, I adjusted my exposure because I want my subject to pop and the textures to really come to life. I am going to increase my contrast a little bit, so maybe around 10-ish. That should do it. Yeah, that's beautiful. Get in there. Now, highlights. Let's have a look at those. So we zoom in and we can see that this theta over here is not really burned, so it hasn't lost details. However, I do want to recover some details and some textures in there, so I'm going to decrease the highlights slightly. And as you can see, like, look at this theta cube over here. We bring back some of that detail, which works pretty nicely. Also, I think here on the napkin, it's better to bring back some of this texture. So I just lowered my highlights a little bit. In terms of shadows, again, my aim here is to make this image moody. So I probably want to decrease my shadows a little bit. Now, one thing I'm noticing is that by decreasing these shadows in my whole picture, what I'm getting is actually, I'm getting some darker areas here that and this subject here is getting very dark. So I'm not really happy with that, but I'm happy with how everything else looks. So I will decrease my shadows, my overall shadows here in the main slider, and then I'm gonna work locally with my adjustment brush to bring back some of the details in these shadows here, again, locally with my brush. So I'll do that at the end. Then moving down to the whites, I can see now that because I lowered my highlights, my whites are a little bit muted at the moment. I want to really make them pop. So I am going to bring back some of those whites, making sure that I don't lose detail in my picture too much. So just enough that I have some clipping, but that the clipping doesn't really affect the overall look of the picture. This way my whites are a little bit more punchy. As you can see, there's more contrast in the image as well, which helps bring out the texture more. And blacks, let's try and see what happens. I think might be a little bit too much, so for now I'm not gonna touch the blacks. Now down here we do want to play around with texture and clarity a little bit, because I do want to increase this texture. So with texture, always go easy on it, because otherwise the image looks fake. So check it out. If I push it all the way to 100, oh my god, it looks super, super fake. It's like plastic. So with texture, I generally recommend staying around 15, 20 tops, so that you still get more texture without it looking fake. And clarity, same concept. If I push my clarity, it's gonna look too weird. So again, with clarity, just a touch. And here is because, again, I am trying to increase my texture. Otherwise, I might not have touched the texture and clarity. I might have left them as they were. In terms of colors, I do want to make my colors pop against this beautiful wooden background. I generally don't touch the saturation, because I think it affects the colors in a way that makes them look super fake, as you can see. So generally I leave the saturation slider, the overall saturation slider still, and I only play with the vibrance a little bit. Again, not much, because otherwise your colors start to look fake. But maybe you can go around 10, 15. Let's see, depends on what works for your picture. For this one, I think 15 is a good number. Then we go down here to the HSL panel. I love this one. And here is where you can actually play with your colors more and fine-tune them. So here I am going to play with my saturation and luminance a little bit. So first thing I want to do is I want to make this green really pop. So I am going to increase the selective saturation only on the green and a little bit on the red as well. There we go. I don't want to increase the yellow saturation, because otherwise this is gonna start looking very oily. So I'm gonna leave the yellow down. However, I do want my plates to, they're looking a little pale and muted, so I want to make them pop a little bit more, give them a little bit more character. And that's aqua, I believe, yes. So I'm just going to saturate the aqua color a little bit, and you can see that it's got a different look already. I love it. And you can see what you've done by toggling it on and off. It's very subtle, as you can see. It's nothing major, because again, you don't want your image to look fake. You still want it to look realistic and appealing to the eyes. So don't overdo it with colors. Don't overdo it with editing in general. Now that I've worked on my colors, I am going to move down to my detail panel here. I shot this image at ISO 100, so there's virtually no noise. Even in the lower, in the darkest shadows here, there's no noise. So I am going to give it a little bit of sharpening. There we go, to bring out, again, more of this lovely texture. But I'm not gonna play with the noise too much. Maybe I'm just gonna give it like a 10 or a 12, just to make the sharpening look less obvious and a little bit softer. Not gonna touch anything else here, and I'm going to go to the lens correction panel. So I always have that ticked, and I'm going to enable the profile correction. This was shot with a 50mm, so there isn't much in terms of vignetting, because the 50mm is a brilliant lens optically, so it gives you the best quality. But the perspective sometimes gets a little distorted, especially on wider scenes like this, so let's correct that. Then, obviously, in this image, we shot with horizontal lines, so we have to make sure that those lines are actually horizontal. So let's have a look at the auto transform and see if the perspective gets corrected. Then we're going to click on the crop or press R on your keyboard, and we're going to check whether the lines are actually straight, and they do look pretty straight over here, so that's awesome. So we've also corrected the perspective on our image here. So now we're at the bottom of the settings. I'm not going to touch effects and calibration. I'm pretty happy with the way the image looks. However, I'm not entirely happy with the way my subject is looking. I think this one down here is way too dark, and here as well there's a little bit too much contrast. So now I am happy with the general overall look and feel of the image. And you can always go back and look at your before and after by pressing the forward space bar on your keyboard. You can toggle between your before and your after. So pretty happy with the moody look in my background and my shadows. But I want to work selectively on my subjects now. So I am going to go and take my adjustment brush. Now what I want to do with my adjustment brush is press O to select the overlay, so you can see exactly where you're painting your layer mask. I want to go and brighten my shadows here. So I am just going to put a mask on the darker spots in my salad over here, and I'm gonna work with one plate at a time. So now I'm gonna work on this salad here, the main salad. And once I'm happy with my layer mask, I'm gonna press O to get rid of the overlay, and I want to brighten my shadows a little bit. Maybe I will increase my whites to make it more punchy, and let's see if I play with the exposure, if that's gonna look super fake. No, actually, that's a little less, but that's pretty much... I kind of like it this way. We want that to be 50. No! Oopsie. 50, please. Thank you very much. Hey. Mamma mia. IT fails. So I want that to be a 50, please. There we go. Made it. Okay. And again, we can toggle this on and off just to see the before and after. And this way, I think my subject really pops a lot more. I think this was a little bit too much on the moody side. So I'm pretty happy with this. I'm going to move on to my second salad now. So I'm going to create a new adjustment brush. And I am going to press O and get the overlay and paint my layer mask over the areas that I want brighter. Like over here, I think that's pretty dark. I do want it brighter, so there we go. Let's see. Once I'm happy with my mask, I'm going to press O. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to brighten my shadows, increase my exposure slightly without making it look fake. So maybe a bit more, let's see. And maybe give it a little bit more whites. Let's tweak this a little bit. You can always go back. So like, if you're still not convinced, always play around. It's not that looks fake, but it's not like you're doing something destructive. You're actually nothing. Oh, that was too much. Whoa, too much. None of these edits is destructive, so you can always go back. Increasing some, putting some lighting here and here, here. There we go. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. There we go. And again, I can toggle on and off just to see Oh, maybe I overdid it there a little bit, so I'm gonna bring the exposure back down. Okay, yeah, that'll do it. So, let's see. Yes, that's good. All right, so now I can work on my third salad. So again, new adjustment brush. O to get my layer, overlay, and painting into the darker spots. Here I'm gonna be a lot more subtle, so that's probably enough. And a little bit, bring the shadows back, exposure up. Here we go. That's not as important. It's like my third subject there, so it's fine. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So toggle on and off just to see the overall feel there. And now another thing that I noticed before, and I want to correct, is that little guy over there. That's Elliot's fault, Laura's cat. So I'm gonna grab my clone brush and I am going to carefully make sure that it won't look fake. So I'm gonna clean it up. Smaller brush, and voila, that should do it. Lightroom is pretty good at predicting, but as you can see now, there's a little like step here, so I'm gonna adjust that to make it in line, to put it in line with the rest of the plate, so that you don't see the little step it's created. Is that gonna look okay? Can do better. It's a fine-tuning type thing. Okay, that should do it. Yeah, now I can cowl. It's a little slow, so I can't look. Oh god, come on. Here we go. That should do it. Yes, please stay. No. Oh my god. Okay, fine. So done. We zoom out and we take a look at our final picture. And again, we toggle on and off between our before and after to check out our progress. I'm now pretty happy with this picture. My initial idea was to make it moody and rustic looking and very, like, make the textures pop. So I think we've achieved that very well in this picture. Obviously, that was my vision, but if you want to practice using this raw file, you can make it look whatever you want. Just go here, create a virtual copy, and reset the editing on the virtual copy. And from here, you've got a blank canvas, a blank raw file that you can do whatever you want to. So if you want to make it bright and airy, that you can give it that look as well. Ta-da! Obviously, do it a little better than this, but you get the idea. You can edit it the way you want, and you can see with the editing how different images, the same image, can look. Bright and airy versus rustic and moody. So have fun with it, and if you've got any questions, pop them in the comments. And if any of this wasn't clear, go back to our video classes, because we go in depth into every aspect and every one of these topics that I talked about today. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time. I'll see you there. Ciao!